So you have the option to move to Germany and you're wondering if, when, and how your spouse can join you. We will talk about the requirements, whether the joining spouse can work, and we will also talk about 4 scenarios from real-life examples so you can have a better understanding on how to make your move work. The goal for this video is for you to make an educated plan with a general timeline that you can expect when you move to Germany. And if you would like to prepare best for your upcoming move to Germany, make sure to sign up to our Prep Your Move email series that we have created for you, which you can find in the description box below. Hey, my name is Jen and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create English content to empower internationals to move to and settle into life in Germany more smoothly. And before we start, we have Yvonne here giving us the German legal disclaimer.
Yes, very important for this video because we will be diving into the topics of visa and immigration law. And here is to say we are not immigration lawyers, and this video serves for your informational and educational purpose only. It does not substitute any legal advice. Also, I just want to emphasize that we will be going into depth to give you the best information possible. I've done my due diligence in researching the actual laws. I've consulted with lawyers, and also we will be talking about actual real-life experience that we've gathered over 5 years doing this. However, we are not allowed, even though if you would like to, we are not allowed to comment or answer individual questions that you might have in the comments below.
Okay, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. The first question is can you move to Germany as a married couple?
Yes, otherwise this would be a very short video.
The answer is no, that's it, thank you.
So Germany does allow to have married couples or also couples living in a civil union to join and live together in Germany. This also applies to same-sex marriage or civil unions. Now, the official terminology for this is called Family Reunification.
Okay, now that we have clarified that it is possible, what are the legal requirements for family reunification? Before we dive further into this video, we would like to introduce our 2 characters of this journey. There is the leading spouse, which is the person who has legal grounds to move to Germany and stay here longer than 90 days to actually make a life here. And then there's the joining spouse, which is the one who is following, so to speak, the one who is going to ask for that family reunification process. Okay, now that we have those characters defined, let's first look at the requirements for the joining spouse.
The joining spouse needs to, of course, have a valid passport. And they will also need to present a copy of the passport of the leading spouse. Then, of course, you will need to present your original marriage certificate. Depending on the language it is in, you will need to have this translated to German, and depending on the requirements of your country, it will need to also be legalized or apostilled by the respective official governments or whatever things in your country. Now, you will also need to provide proof of health insurance for your travel and then once you're in Germany. And you will need to prove A1 level of German. Now, this is usually done with a certificate. Here, actually, the embassies and the government bodies are very specific that it needs to be an official certificate, such as from the Goethe-Institut, from TELC, or the TEST DAF, so that's German as a foreign language. And they also say that it cannot be older than 1 year.
Now, hold on. I know you were the lead researcher here, and you told me so much about this A1 certificate, so I will give you a short window to rant about what's happening now. Okay.
Thank you. Am I on the clock?
Yes.
Okay. So this A1 certificate is an official requirement. However, there are a gazillion, and I kid you not, a gazillion exceptions when you might not need it. So, for example, one of the main requirements is if the leading spouse has an EU blue card, or if the leading spouse is from certain privileged nationalities, Canada, US, Japan, and a few others. We'll talk about them later in more detail. Another exception is if you can, in your visa or residence permit interview, showcase that you actually have enough German skills that go beyond the A1 and can hold a basic conversation. However, this is the theory, and the exceptions are, to be honest, not so clean-cut, not so straightforward, because I have consulted multiple official websites from the German government and embassies, and there are some discrepancies there. So it is a case-by-case scenario. And my conclusion after literally spending hours of doing this...
You literally spent hours doing this.
...is the following. Either, if you want to be super safe, get that A1 certificate, because this is just the step of you learning German and you want to learn German anyways to feel more at home here and integrate better. Or you know that you're good enough at German and you can just prove that during this so-called interview. Or you do your own research and you know the exception that you're basing your statement on why you don't have it and can actually provide the proof for that. Which is because like I just mentioned, if you are joining a spouse that has a US passport and the person has the legal right to staying here, technically you should not need it. However, I know for a fact, currently there is a case where exactly the scenario is happening here in Germany, and the spouse, also from the US, was asked for it for the A1 certificate.
Rant over. So I just want to say, from my perspective, your last suggestion to know your rights and actually say that, I wouldn't say that. For example, I wouldn't do that. Sorry, you said it, that's okay. But I wouldn't do that because A, that puts you in a position that you need to argue with like an official governmental thing. And plus, you want to learn German anyways.
Hopefully.
And A1, literally, it's like your basics of understanding German. So I would go for the previous route that you said, like learn it, get the certificate, and just go. That's the easiest paying for it. Because also, I think arguing with like an immigration person just puts you already in a not so good light, right? Because you're not also making an effort that, oh yeah, I know I need German, but like, no, I don't need German because of my rights, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't need it, but I have it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I know you wanted to say so much more. However, I think that did it. Okay, so now let's jump into the requirements for the leading spouse. What documents do they need to provide?
Correct.
Generally.
They need to provide their city registration in Germany. Pretty much, it's called the Meldebestätigung or Meldebescheinigung in German. And that pretty much shows proof that the leading spouse is in Germany and is a resident here.
And just to clarify, this is a document that you get during your Anmeldung appointment or at the end of your Anmeldung appointment.
Mm-hmm. Then in some instances, which we will dive in later, you or the leading spouse will need to provide their residence permit of Germany. Then they might also need to provide proof of housing, and they might actually need to write a letter of invitation and proving that they have enough financial stability to sustain the spouse also living in Germany.
Mm-hmm. So some things that they might require from you is some bank statements or the pay slips from the last months or something like that. Again, I would say these requirements are like the baseline. And again, every case is very different and you might be asked for more or less documents. That's why it's very important for you to always refer to the local embassy or the immigration office here to see what they are asking for, because what they're asking for is what is actually needed. That is more the truth than the baseline that we're saying.
Yeah, and you will always find a checklist that actually highlights what documents you need and also whether you need them in the original or in the copy form, and also how many copies of that, because usually it's not just one.
Yes, that's very true. Okay, now jumping to our next topic, and that's the fun one. And the question is, can the joining spouse work in Germany?
And the answer is yes. The joining spouse will have full working rights, and that is freaking awesome because the Family Reunification visa or permit, the permit, is just like a work permit pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Small disclaimer, the full working rights will not start when you set foot into Germany, so when you travel here and move here, but only once you get your actual residence permit or at least appointment with the local immigrations office.
Okay, so what's the best strategy to move? Should one partner lead first and the other follow? Should they move together? According to your research, what would you say?
It's a very good question. And as always, it depends. It depends on both of your nationalities, actually. So this is why we have created 4 scenarios with real-life examples to depict the different angles and possibilities to hopefully make this as clean-cut and clear as possible.
So let's start with our example number 1.
For example 1, the leading spouse has either a German or EU passport/citizenship, and the joining spouse has the citizenship passport of a so-called privileged country. You want to say something?
Yes, I wanted to thank you for giving me the platform. That I don't like this term privileged and unprivileged countries. However, when doing the research, this is the terminology used by embassies and immigration stuff. So if you want to do further research, these are the terms that you will need to use. Rant over.
Thank you. So we will now put a picture of the privileged countries on the screen and read through them. And if you have a passport or if the joining spouse has a passport from Andorra, Australia, Brazil, Canada, El Salvador, Honduras, Israel, Japan, Monaco, New Zealand, San Marino, Republic of South Korea, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, well, the UK, and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America, then the following can happen because you can both move together to Germany. And then the joining spouse with the privileged passport can apply for the Family Reunification residence permit from within Germany with the local immigration office. Easy peasy,
Lemon squeezy.
No separation of the both of you necessary.
And for a real life example, we have Aline, who was born and raised in Brazil. However, she has a German passport through inheritance, and she's married to another Brazilian, Pedro. And Pedro only has the Brazilian passport, and he is one of these privileged countries that we mentioned. They both moved together to Germany, and within Germany, Pedro was able to apply for the Family Reunification residence permit. Once he got that permit, he then found a job and was able to work in Germany. Now let's go to example number 2, which we will remain with the leading spouse having either a German or EU citizenship, and the joining spouse has a passport from a not privileged country, which is a term that I don't like, but anyways.
So pretty much rest of world.
Yes.
In this scenario, the leading spouse will actually need to move first to Germany and register, aka do the Anmeldung. We have a whole video up here that goes into detail about the Anmeldung. And why? Because as we mentioned before with the requirements, is that pretty much the joining spouse cannot move to Germany without a visa. And in order to apply for the family reunification visa, they need to prove that the German spouse or EU spouse is already a resident of Germany, aka they need to show the paper that you get at the Anmeldung, the Meldebescheinigung, the city registration. Without that, no visa.
And now we have a real life example, and that is the example of Christian and Mary, or you would say in German, Christian. Mm-hmm. So Christian, he has a Guatemalan passport as well as a German one because his father is German. Mary only has a Guatemalan passport. So in this case, Christian moved first to Germany and did the whole process that you did. And Mary was able to join him through family reunification within 3 months. So that was relatively quick. The times, of course, of processing highly depend on your embassy and the citizen's office here in Germany. But this is just one example of how quick it was. In a way.
The citizen's office is not involved in this case because you have the leading spouse has a passport, right?
Ah, right.
So it's all about how fast does the leading spouse get the Anmeldung appointment.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
We want you to do that as fast as possible. Again, watch that video. It depends on how long this takes, on how fast the embassy in the foreign country takes.
Yeah. Fair point.
Now, example number 3, bear with us, gets slightly more complicated, but we can do this.
Yes, let's do this, step by step.
Okay.
So, leading spouse.
No, not leading spouse, both of you. Both of you don't have citizenships from the EU or any privileged country. Pretty much you're both from the rest of world. And one of you, the leading spouse, gets some legal reason to move to and stay in Germany, aka, for example, a job contract. There's other ways, but let's just go with a job contract. Mm-hmm. In this case, the leading spouse actually needs to get the work visa first from the home country to enter Germany. And then once they enter Germany, they also need to register at the citizen's office to get the Anmeldung, and then also apply for a residence permit with the local immigration office, the Ausländerbehörde. Now, after the leading spouse has both of those documents, the joining spouse, which is still in the home country or where else they're living, can then apply at the local embassy for the family reunification visa, presenting both of the documents and much more like we discussed earlier. The difference to the previous example here is that the time of separation of both spouses is most likely a little bit, if not a lot longer, because not only does it depend on how long the embassy abroad takes to process the visa of the joining spouse, but it also depends on how fast the local immigration office in Germany processes the residence permit. Because although some of the official texts that I have researched state that alone the application of the residence permit, or let's say the preliminary version of it, should be enough to apply for the visa, in practice we know it often is not, and that both the local immigration office and the foreign embassy require for the leading spouse to actually have the physical plastic card of the residence permit. And once that document is there, then only can the visa application abroad start. And that can take months. In our real-life example,
which I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, in our real-life example, we have the example of Maciel and Cynthia, both from the Dominican Republic. And then Cynthia moved to Germany first because she had the legal grounds to enter Germany and stay here. She went through the process that you said. She did she got the visa, did the Anmeldung, applied for the residence permit. And then it was this example where they were asking for her physical residence permit before Maciel could actually continue the process from back in the Dominican Republic. So the time that they were separated, or the whole process, took 8 months from the moment Cynthia left and Maciel was able to join in Germany with her proper documents.
Yeah. Now those timelines are just real life examples. They may vary. They might be super fast, which I mean, yeah, can happen, or they might take even longer. It really depends on the country you're coming from and the city you're moving to in Germany. One more small thing I want to mention, because this is also a real life case that we are aware of, is that some local Ausländerbehördes will actually want to wait until they greenlight the visa, family reunification visa, until the leading spouse has passed their probation period in Germany, which is typically 6 months. This is I've never heard of this before because nowhere is it written in legal text, but it's a real life scenario. So again, this showcases how individual every case is and how much it depends on the caseworker that you get to work with.
Now let's go to our fourth example. And in this case, you both come from a privileged country or have privileged citizenship, or however we call it, but don't have any EU citizenship. For example, you're both from the USA. If you remember our list of privileged countries, USA is one of them. And in this case, one of you, aka the leading spouse, will have or has the option to move to Germany for whatever reason to stay here legally. In this case, what happens?
In this case, you technically can also both move together and apply from within Germany for both the, let's say the leading spouse has a job contract, the work permit, and at the same time, the family reunification visa. Now, why do I say technically? Because I have seen this happen. However, I can imagine, this is now just purely my biased individual opinion. There is no real legal grounds that I could find for this that I've found in written. Technically, the local Ausländerbehörde could deny the family reunification visa because the case that the leading spouse has already established a livelihood here and this joining spouse can just join is not there yet, because the leading spouse is also just applying for the work permit in that sense and hasn't really gotten any pay slips yet. So this is a gray area for me. Again, it's not impossible, but I just cannot say that this is one of the most popular ways to do so. In this case, though, because both of the spouses have privileged citizenships and don't need an entry visa to go to Germany, I think there is a bit of leeway. You could both move together and let's say the joining spouse can leave again until everything is processed for just a few weeks, for example, and then come back. You have more flexibility with timing than, let's say, if you're from the rest of world country.
Yeah, and then if you need a visa to enter Germany, for example. Now that you have a better understanding, hopefully, of what scenario of all the ones that we discussed is most likely for you to move with your spouse to Germany, you will discover that you will have a bunch of other things to take care of. But don't worry, we have prepared this other video here on the left, which is a must-watch, where we actually talk about a 90-day plan that covers all the crucial steps that you should consider before moving and after moving to Germany. So you make sure to watch that. Until next time, cheers!